Today, we're going to talk about interpersonal communications, doing Zoom calls, WebExes, talking to people on the phone. Truly, when you go back to live, meeting with people in person. And I got to tell you, anytime you communicate in life, the phrase perception is truth is very applicable. There are two key concepts that form the foundation of everything I'm going to teach you today, and really everything I do in life. Number one thing, you all got to get into your head. When you have a conversation with another person, when you present to people, when you run a meeting, when you do a Zoom call or whatever, when you leave that meeting, when you hang up that phone, when you walk out of that room, turn off that camera, that person or those people that you were talking to will only remember, will only retain 20 to 30% of what you say. Erica, if I call you tomorrow and say, hey, Anthony, or hey, Erica, it's Anthony, if you'd even remember who I was at that point, and I said, hey, what did we talk about yesterday? Studies show that you, Erica, and everybody on this call could only give me the highlights, the 20 to 30% of my little talk today. You couldn't regurgitate 100%, but you will all have a what? A perception of how I am as a communicator. Now, what I'm about to tell you is going to blow your mind. Is studies consistently show that people really only take away about 20% of what you tell them. What is the 20% that you want them to remember? Is it 20 of the random percent that you're spewing out of your mouth? Or are you thinking strategically about your content? Anybody here ever hear of the marketing rule of 7? What does that mean? In marketing and advertising of products, services, and your company, you need to expose your audience to your message at least 7 times before it's implanted in somebody's brain. Well, knowing that, knowing they're only going to remember 20% of what you tell them, what strategic thought are you putting into those words coming out of your mouth? I do a tremendous amount of work for the construction industry. I do a lot of work for other industries, but for whatever reason, you people like me. Companies like yours, GC, CM, subcontractors will hire me to come in and work with the project interview team when you're interviewing for the 150 million project downtown. When I come in to do that interview prep, before we start talking about Q&A or practicing or any of that, the very first question I ask the team is, Bob, what's the 5, the 3, the 2 things that are going to get you this job? You know what we do? We fight about it for about an hour because the BD guy thinks it's this. The superintendent thinks it's that. The president of the company thinks it's this. The PM thinks it's that. Once we truly identify the 2 things that are going to get us this job, we do everything that we can to work those 2 things into the dog and pony show and the Q&A. I know at the end of that hour interview that owner is only going to remember 20% of what your team told him. What do you think I want that 20% to be? Those 2 things. That's putting strategic thought into content. Most of you, and by you, I mean all people in business really, especially the industry, are not strong communicators because you're going into meetings, you're going into Zoom calls, you're going into phone calls, just spewing content out of your mouth without really thinking, what do I want the person to remember at the end of my 5-minute little conversation or hour presentation? So that's one of the major concepts we're going to work on today in the context of presenting virtually. How are you focusing on the 20%? What is that perception that you're leaving with the people that you're talking to? So concept 1, they only remember 20%. Concept 2, at any given time while you are talking in presentations, in conversations, when you're running a meeting or whatever, at any given time while you are talking, 50% of your audience is not paying attention. 50% of your audience is engaged in a deep personal thought. Right now, half of you aren't even listening to me. Truly, what are you thinking? My wife hates me. My son's an idiot. What are we going to have for dinner tonight? Truly knowing, even for good presenters, at any given time, half your audience is mentally checked out. What do you think our goal is when we talk to people to constantly do what? Snap the people back. But here's the problem. If you're like the 90% of Derek Allens out there, when you get up to present, you sound like this. My name is Derek. I'm never going to look anywhere else the entire day. I'm going to drone on in one monotonous tone. I've got 50,000 PowerPoint slides. Where do you think that 50% of people not paying attention goes? Up to 80 to 90%, right? And where does the retention of content go? Down to 5 to 10%. So if you want more people to hear the words that are coming out of your mouth and more of those people to retain more of those words, you need to be what I call an interesting communicator and learn how to snap the people back. So that's the second concept we're going to work on today, is how are you delivering your content in an interesting way that makes people pay attention to you and thusly take more of your content away. And hopefully it's the 20% you want them to remember. So if you think about it, anytime you communicate, whether it's in the live world or the virtual world, two things going on: what you're saying, how you're saying it. They need to be treated equally important. So before we get started, this is different from last week. Last week was me mostly just spewing content out at you. This is going to be engaging today. So I want everyone, unless you're in your underwear or pajamas or something, I want you to turn your cameras on for me. I'm going to pick on a couple people. Obviously, I can't get to everybody. And I want to find out a couple things. So everyone turn them on, or I'm going to make you turn them on. All right. How about Heather? Heather, is it Mankey? If you can't turn your camera on, tell me why, and you could just do it audibly.
I'm here.
Oh, hi. How are you?
Good. How are you?
So, tell me what you do. Tell me type of communicating you're doing now. Have you shifted to virtual communications, and what's that been like for you, and what do you want to get out of today?
Yeah, so I am the marketing manager at Vogel Brothers Building Company, and we have shifted to virtual. I also sit on the board for a marketing organization, and we've we shifted all of our programs to virtual that way. And I've attended a couple programs like this with some tips, and everyone kind of has some different takes on best tips and tricks. So I'm just looking forward to hearing your spin on it.
You know, it's interesting that in 3 months, we've all been asked to become broadcast journalists, right? Before, no one, I mean, sure, we did Skype and FaceTime and all that, but no one really took it seriously. Now, all of us have been asked, oh, I got to be a Anderson Cooper or a Dan Rather kind of a person. And a lot of people are having trouble with it. Heather, what have you seen that's annoyed you in some of these virtual presentations that you've seen?
I think the big thing for me is when people don't turn off their mic and you can hear them typing away and you hear the little click, click, click in the background. A little distracting.
Absolutely. And really, you're going to learn, and Heather can probably attest to this because she's seen other people like me. I'm not going to give you one tip that's going to make you this fantastic presenter, solve all of your problems. You're going to learn that it is all these little things that if you start to incorporate into your presenting, you're going to build that perception. It's all about leaving that perception. You know, when we do, you're in marketing, there's a lot of people are doing new business development on virtual now. I had a client, very large GC in the United States, told me last week they did 4 virtual presentations for new business interviews. Thanks, Heather. You can mute yourself again. And you know, it's interesting. Who do you think, this is rhetorical because we're not there live, who do you think are the 2 most important people in new business for your company, for your general contractor or construction manager? Is it the president of the company? Is it Heather, the marketing person? Is it the BD person? The 2 most important people in that room: project managers and project superintendents. The owner wants to know who he or she is going to work with over the next 2 years on this project, not the BD person. They'll probably never see him again. Here's the problem. Where is a project superintendent 300 plus days a year? Are they in the office doing virtual presentations? Are they selling? They're building the project. So here you come on a Friday at 5 o'clock and say, hey, Bob, hey, man, come here. We got an interview for work coming up. It's pretty important to our company. It's probably going to determine if we stay in business. We want you to be a part of it. Don't worry about it. You're just going to come in, tell us a little bit about what you do on the job site, maybe talk a little bit about the safety program. No big deal. By the way, it's Monday morning. Have a good weekend. And then the guy starts to flip out. So here you take a superintendent who holds the future of your company in his hands. He's not used to presenting, and now you thrust him in front of the CEO of a hospital system and expect him to perform miracles. It is hard enough for people in the industry, a lot of these field people especially, to communicate in normal times. Now we're asking this person to come on, sit in front of a camera and do and work magic. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about all those little things that are interfering with magic happening. Magic is also what I call it the it factor. Have you heard that phrase before, the X factor or the it factor? Last year, I gave 25 keynote speeches across the country to a group of IT people. The title of my speech was called Bringing the It Factor to IT. Pretty clever, huh? And we've all met somebody that has the it factor, whether it's a high school teacher, a college professor, a work colleague, a priest, a pastor, that you just want to listen to them. They're really inspirational. You just hang on every word. The it factor is what makes a manager, and there's a lot of those out there, a true leader, and there's very few of those, I have found. And as I travel around the world working with these men and women, I've noticed that a lot of these senior leaders just have this stuff. It's really hard to put your finger on that draws you to them. And I have found that there are 3 areas of the it factor, and we're going to talk about those in the context of virtual presenting. The first is what I call the verbal it factor, the words that are coming out of your mouth. Leaders who have the verbal it factor focus on the 20%. They truly think, at the end of my 15-minute presentation on Zoom, what do I want the people watching me to remember? That's the verbal it factor, how you convince, how you connect, how you make the magic with your words. Second part of the it factor, which has a lot to do with what we're talking today, is the non-verbal it factor. Everything that involves the physical aspect of communicating. This certainly applies to a live meeting or a live presentation. Of course, there are some nuances here on the camera, but how you hold yourself, your body language, I call it executive presence. A lot of stuff goes on here that really helps you connect, or you'll learn disconnect from people. And then the third part of the it factor, I think it's the most critical. It's where most people fail, and it's the psychological it factor, the desire that people have to seek out opportunities to convince with their words. Now, here's the cool thing. I've worked with thousands of you. Everybody on this call, in your core, at the center of you, you have the it factor. Here's the problem. Why I'm here today and why I still have a job, frankly, is every single person on this call, myself included, have these things that I call barriers to the it factor, things that disconnect us from that magic. A lot of people have verbal barriers to the it factor. They don't think about the 20%. They go into meetings, they go on the Zoom calls, and they just want to get the heck out of there as quickly as possible. They're not thinking about what they're saying. A lot of barriers to the verbal it factor, they're not being concise. Do you think being concise is important when we talk to people? Absolutely. Who's ever been in a meeting, you're the one talking, and while you're talking, you're thinking to yourself, what the heck am I saying? That happens to me all the time. If you ever find yourself rambling, here's your first big tip of the day. I want you to say the words out loud, and my point is. What will that force you to do? Get back to the point you want to make, all right? So not focusing on the 20%, not being concise with your words. It's disconnecting you from the magic of connecting people. A lot of people, and this is what we're going to spend most of our time talking about today, have barriers to the nonverbal it factor when it comes to presenting virtually. They are not using their body language effectively. They're letting the physical, the camera, the background, all their visual aids interfere with what they're trying to do with their words. And live audiences, people like to protect themselves. They like to put themselves between the audience and something else, like a table or a lectern. People like to do that because that psychologically shields them for the audience. That's why I think people absolutely despise cameras, because you're that big, everyone's boring in on you. That's weird for you, so you want to separate yourself. Not having the proper background where things are distracting in the background. Not having the right camera angle, not having the right lighting, all those things are barriers to the nonverbal it factor. Now, you're going to learn today that a lot of these things you can overcome. You can remove these verbal barriers. A lot of people have barriers, physical barriers, that are impossible to remove. For example, you can't tell because I look like I'm 1 foot tall, but in real life, I'm 6 feet tall. I have a very large lung capacity. Amplification is not a challenge for me, even in big rooms. That's good to have. People need to hear what you're saying. My wife is a different story. She's 5'4", slight of frame. She has a very soft voice. Amplification is a challenge for her and people like her. And you know what? It's really not fair, because every time we'll have an argument, she'll look up at me and say, Anthony, why are you always yelling at me? And I'll look down and say, honey, my lung capacity is 4 times the size of yours, so it sounds like I'm yelling. But I digress. Now, my wife can't grow a new set of lungs. She cannot physically remove that soft voice. So is she out of luck? No. She has to do what we call overcompensate for that deficiency of people not being able to hear. She has to move even more toward the audience. She has to use bigger gestures, more expressive facial gestures. She has to engage with the audience a little bit more. You know, here we are talking about virtual presenting. Everyone's having to do it now. In the old days, you all had to do conference calls. If you think that 50% of the people are not paying attention in a live audience, where do you think they are on a Zoom call or a webinar? They're all checking Facebook, right? So this camera, that phone call is a barrier to you connecting with people. I hate this. In a perfect world, I would never, ever talk to a camera. I would want to be right there in person. I could read your body language. I could engage with you. This is the reality, man. So we need to learn how to engage with the audience. Here's another big tip of the day. Anytime I have to do a webinar or a conference call, a Zoom call, a WebEx, in advance of the call, I try to get as many people's first names as possible. Right now, I can see your whole list of everybody that's on this call. And then I try to call on as many of those people as I can in the first 5 to 10 minutes. What signal does that send to everybody on the call? I better pay attention to Anthony. So I use that technique to snap the people back. So when I gave you a notice that you might be called on, turn your camera on, everybody started freaking out and so, oh, well, I better go, get in an area. So that's just a technique to overcompensate or overcome the nonverbal barrier. A lot of people, this is where most people fail. A lot of people have barriers to the psychological it factor. What's the number one fear in America next to death? Public speaking, right? And I just heard on the radio that public speaking has now moved ahead of death as the number one fear. Now, with that said, you're never going to want to do this, but it's that fear, it's that inability to overcome your anxiety that is affecting your magic of connecting with people. Now, here's the cool thing. I have found that if you can remove the verbal barrier, if you can remove or overcompensate for the nonverbal barrier, if you can remove or overcome the psychological barrier, what you're left with is the it factor, and that's how you connect with people. You're going to learn today that anything that interrupts your connecting is bad. There's all these things that we're going to do. So I think, Heather, we're going to give you a lot of tips. You've got a lot of tips before. You look pretty good in your setup. I'm going to give you a tip that even after watching all those people, you're still offending my rule. And I think you look a little bit better, although you look pretty good. All right, who can we pick on now? How about Jesse Dahl? Jesse, step up to the mic. Video or audio, I don't care at this point.
Do audio. Can you hear me?
All right, audio. Talk to me. What do you do? What have you been doing virtually, if anything? And I guess a phone call will be virtual too. And what do you want to get out of today?
I'm a general superintendent for us, so I take care of our field. So a lot of e-meetings, obviously virtual meetings, calls, stuff like that. Everybody's out on site, and I guess what I'd really like to get out of is, how do I get everybody to interact, and how are we effective with field guys and stuff like that?
So what Jesse said, there's different kind of people, right? You got field guys, you got office guys, you got owners, you got subs. Do you think we should treat those people differently? Do you think we should communicate in different ways to those types of people?
I guess from my end, they're looking for different things when we get into meetings, and when we go to an owner and look for different things, how we're trying to sell them on our services. We're trying to sell our field guys on how we're gonna sell our services and how we're gonna do day-to-day operations.
Absolutely. So the answer is yes. You change your messages, you change your style, you change your technique. This is not a one size fits all. You can't go in with one set of tools and connect with everybody. Myself, for example, you can't tell. This is my uniform. So when I would speak live, I guess when I do virtually now, I don't ever wear a tie because it kind of chokes my voice box. I wear a jacket and a collared shirt. So, and normally when I do training or speaking, it's for people like on the call, people of authority that are running job sites. So I was setting up. I was doing work for a civil contractor. I'm setting my stuff up. This is about a year ago, and guys in work boots and name badges with dirt under their hands start walking in the room, and they're all eyeing me. And I felt uncomfortable. They felt uncomfortable. So I had to do something. I could not go status quo. So what did I do? I took off my jacket. I rolled my sleeves out up a little bit. I let my language slide a little bit because my ultimate goal is to connect. And if there's any things that are interfering with that, that's bad. You're going to learn that anything that is distracting to your message, whether it's physical or verbal, is bad. I'll say it again. Anything that is distracting to your 20% you want them to remember, whether it's physical or verbal, is bad. And every single one of us has something that is distracting. I have seen over the last 3 months, a lot of people have a lot of distracting things when they're presenting virtually. So we want to try to remove all those distractions, and that's how we're going to connect with people. So there's different ways that you communicate to different audiences, and we'll talk about, it's all about making the connection, Jesse. Thank you. All right, a couple more people. How about Mark Nagel? Let's see you, hopefully. Mark, are you checking Facebook?
Nope, I'm here.
All right, you sound like you're in your car. Talk to me, Mark. Who are you? What do you do? And what do you want to get out of today?
Yeah, I'm pulled over. What do you want to know?
So what do you do for the company? What type of communicating you've been doing over the last 3 months? And why are you here on this call today?
I caught some of that. I have bad connection apparently. What I do, I'm a job site superintendent. Run job meetings, of course, Zoom calls, and we have a different thing too, go-to meetings.
And what do you want to get out of today?
Becoming a better public speaker, presenting myself better. Basically, that's the majority of it.
What's been one of your biggest challenge that you've had in communicating in this new environment?
I get I think about it, and then maybe it produces a little bit of anxiety that I think about it and how I'm going to present myself and make sure I forecast what I want everybody to know what I'm talking about, I guess.
Okay, and are most of your presentations over the phone, or we're not being able to see you, or do you have some that we actually see you?
Both.
Okay, it's both, right? You know, one thing Mark mentioned that's a challenge for me is he said we do Zoom, we do WebEx, we do Teams, we do, you said something else, Skype or whatever. The problem is that different owners have different expectations, and now we have to learn all the nuances of all these platforms. So here's what we're really going to cover today in the context of being a better presenter. We're going to talk about that camera. The camera is one of the most important tools that you have. Next to the camera is your audio connection. If people can't hear you, that's bad. Next, we're going to talk about the technology. And by the technology, I mean that your computer, what you're using, and most importantly, the internet connection. Now, you had some connectivity issues. There's not a lot you can do about that. So we're going to talk about what to do. I had some issues today. I'm going to tell you a little story about a mini crisis that was avoided. We're going to talk about backgrounds. We're going to talk about how to connect with people. We're all going to talk about these things that you can use outside of a Zoom call, but certainly they're going to help us as we go through. All right, one more person. How about Erica Freeman?
Hi,
Erica.
Sorry, I work in business development. So I think it's mostly just seeing if there are other tips and tricks that I can get out and bring back to our team for BD reasons. Obviously, a lot of interviews are being done virtually now. So that's an important piece. And so I'm looking for tips, tricks, things that we might not be considering.
So I'm curious. So you're probably not on most of the calls during the new business. What are you seeing some challenges with your team when they're presenting virtually?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. A lot of times it is that PM or soup that their job isn't to be a public speaker. So it's figuring out ways that we can get them more comfortable with it. Having a cheat sheet of items, the distracting background, the good lighting are all things that we're aware of, but I think it's just hearing from some of the people on this call too, what are their concerns? Because I think that's just good info for us to bring back to our team for interviews and client interaction.
Absolutely. And the challenge is also the different environments when we present. We have people on the call now that are pulled over on the side of the road. We have people in job trailers that are zooming in on these calls. You have people in offices or their house where you can control that a little bit more, right? Like today, I mean, I have a professional broadcast quality studio in my house with professional lighting and mics and cameras. That's not the reality of life. Not everyone could do that at their house. I would argue all the companies on the phone, unless you're about ready to go bankrupt because you have no money because of COVID-19 or something, you should invest a few $100s creating a space that everyone that's in the office can look good. And then I'll give you some tips on how to maybe fix up their house or a job trailer. One of my favorite sayings is there's perfection and there's reality. In a perfect world, I could talk about it all day long. I realize you can't always do that, but you should do both. That'll be part of the whole context. All right, so let's get started. Before you can do anything that I'm going to tell you about all those little things that connect virtually, the most important thing that you need to think about is the words coming out of your mouth. You're not going to be able to do anything I'm going to teach you to snap the people back if your words are not the best that they can be or set up the way that they can be. So we're going to start with that, and then we'll go into the other things that we can talk about. There are 4 types of, I call them presentations. They're really communications in life, whether they're a conversation or running a meeting or doing a Zoom call. The first is what I call an impromptu presentation. Who can tell me what is an impromptu presentation? Where you just get up and what? Wing it. What I just did with Heather and Jesse and everybody else, just tell me what you do. That's where you just get up off the top of your head and you wing it. That's a type that people do every single day. Every time you pick up the phone, impromptu presentation, isn't it? The second type of presentation is an extemporaneous presentation. This is where I speak in some way to a set of bullet points. Who can tell me what is the classic bullet point type presentation that we deliver in business today? PowerPoint, right? And if you think about it, it's really just winging it with a guide. I got to do a 15-minute presentation on overhead safety. I got a bullet point that says ladders or tie-offs. I get up, I wing it for 5 minutes on ladders, and then I go to the next bullet point. So it's really just winging it with a guide. So bullet points. Third type of presentation is a scripted presentation. This is where I've written out word for word everything that I'm going to say. I stand up and I deliver those words. Now, what happens every 4 years in this country where we see these scripted presentations all over the place? The election, right? We're about ready to get into it. So when Joe Biden gives a speech in Podunk, Iowa, it's a cookie cutter duplicate of the one he delivers in New York City, Sacramento, Milwaukee, or Sarasota, where I live. Every word that comes out of his mouth is exactly the way he wants it to be. We just saw this last month with all the commencement speeches that were done online. Fourth type of presentation is a memorized presentation. This is where I've committed to memory 100%. I stand up and I deliver those words. All right, now I know a little bit about some of you. I want you to know even more about me. In life, I subscribe both professionally and personally to the Boy Scout and Girl Scout motto. What is that? Always be prepared. Now, knowing that about me, do you think I like impromptu presentations? No. Remember, when you try to wing it, 2 things happen. One, you implode. It rarely happens, but I've seen it. I've seen a project superintendent implode in the middle of a $300 million project interview, sit down in his chair, stare out the window and says, that's all I got to say about that. And the whole team fell like dominoes. It rarely happens, but it happens. What more than likely happens is that you walk out of that room, you flip off that camera or whatever, and you say to yourself, oh, I wish that went better. Do you think I like 100% memorized presentations? No. When you try to memorize something 100%, two things also happen. One, you sound like a what? A robot. Hi, my name is Ryan. I'm here to tell you today. The second thing that happens is you look out in the audience, you look on your screen, and Heather makes some weird face at you, and the next thing you know, you forget everything you're going to say and you implode. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give you a revolutionary new way to organize your content. And it really involves all four of those elements: the impromptu, the bullet point, the scripting, and the memorizing. I want you to think about the two types of words coming out of your mouth day in and day out. The first is what I call the tearaway or the throwaway presentation. This is content that I will deliver one time and probably never talk about it again. If I'm, let's say I'm Jeff and I have to deliver the Q3 budget report to the executive team or the board of the AGC, I stand up, I deliver those numbers, and I'll probably never talk about those numbers again. I'll just throw them in the trash on the way out of the meeting. In my experience, that represents about 10% of the stuff coming out of your mouth day in and day out. The majority of the words that you deliver, whether it's in one-on-one conversations or formal presentations or meetings, are what I call stock presentations. Stock presentations. This is content that you'll speak to a group on Monday about. You'll speak to another group on Thursday, and the majority of those words are the same. Raise your hand if you've given some form of presentation in the last 6 months to a year. I could see your hands. Okay, yeah, so I'm not gonna call on you. So everybody is probably raised your hands. Now think about it. Well, actually, let's pick on Erica's because I could see her. So Erica, what did you talk about in your last presentation?
The job, my company, trying to sell.
Okay, your company. Okay, good. So when you talk about your company on Monday and you speak to another owner about your company on a Thursday, what % of those words are the same?
At least a quarter, depending on what their questions are. But
at least a quarter. I mean, so you have service. So I bet if you think about it, I bet it's a lot more than a quarter. I would say it's the majority of the words that you're saying. I would say, in my experience, and I've asked that question thousands of times, about 70 to 90% of the words that come out of your mouth day in and day out are the same. Now, what's the 20% that would be different? Let's say if it's an average of 80%. That's customized to that owner. Like, what do they want to talk about? Your services. What's one of your services that your company offers, or one of your areas that you do?
Self-perform work.
Okay, so when you talk about your self-perform work on a Monday and you speak about your capabilities to self-perform work on a Friday, a majority of those words are the same, are they not? Yeah. So I bet your company, so let's go into the field, at PMs, superintendents, I bet you have procedures in place to maintain the schedule, do you not? Things that you do. I bet you have procedures in place to maintain the budget, do you not? Now, do those procedures change? Hope not. That's why they're called procedures. So when you're talking to owner A on a Monday about procedures to maintain the schedule and what you do, it's probably very similar to what you're talking to another owner on Thursday to maintain that schedule. Same with BIM. If the people that are using BIM, when you talk to an owner on Friday about BIM, about what you do for BIM and the value of BIM, and you talk to another one, the majority of those words are the same. So you all have to identify at your company, in your role at your company, what are those stock presentations? It's really the majority of the words. Now, there will be some custom when you're talking about job specifics. They're your safety program. So if the superintendent has to go into a project interview and he's got 3 minutes to talk about a safety program, your safety program does not change from interview to interview. The majority of those words coming out of his mouth are the same. Your experience in the healthcare market does not change unless you get a new job for a hospital. Presentation to presentation. So think about those stock presentations. Now, here's how you work towards perfection. Before you can do anything to snap the people back on Zoom or wherever, you got to get your content down. I want you to take that stock presentation on your procedures, on self-perform work, on your safety program or whatever, and I want you to get in front of a room and I want you to get a video camera. Raise your hand if you own a video camera. Raise your hand if you own one of these. You all have a video camera, big bar or steel one if you don't. If you're still on 1990s technology, maybe it's time to upgrade. I want you to get big bar steel iPad, your phone, a camera, and I want you to stand in front of a room and I want you to video record that presentation on self-perform, safety program, or whatever. Now, here's the magic. Here's the grumbling, because it's a lot of hard work. Once you do that, I want you to take that video camera back to your desk. I want you to sit down and I want you to transcribe word for word everything that you said on that video camera. Are you kidding me, Anthony? No, I'm not kidding you. After you go through that video transcription, now what will you have in front of you? A script, right? Now, here's the true magic. You're all going to start to edit that script, and you are going to see some amazing things happening. You're going to say to yourself, ooh, why did I say that? That doesn't even make sense. Ooh, what if I said this way? What if I took this that came at the end and moved it to the beginning? Now, after you go through that editing process, now what will you have in front of you? A script that is what? Perfect. Every single word that's on that page is exactly the way you want it to be. More importantly, you've put strategic thought into the 20%. You know, Erica, at the end of your little 5-minute talk on your self-perform capabilities, that owner is only going to remember 20% of what you told him about self-performing. What is the 20% you want him or her to remember, and how many times have you reinforced it throughout your 5 minutes? So at the end of this exercise, you will be left with a script made up of perfect words and strategic thought into the 20%. Now, if you try to stand up and deliver that script, you're going to sound like a what? A robot. Hi, my name is Bob. I'm here to tell you about. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you, I've got extra content that I'm going to send to the AGC of Wisconsin that you're going to be able to watch for a limited time. And it's going to teach you how to take that script that's made up of perfect words and make it sound conversational. We just don't have time to get into today because I want to spend our time talking about virtual, but just get into your head. You're not going to be able to do anything I'm going to teach you until you get your content down. All right, I want you to think of all of your presentations, whether it's a 5-minute talk or an hour interview, differently from now on. I want you to think of your presentations made up of the context of what I call bits, B-I-T-S, and you'll learn more about those on the video. Now, what is a bit? A bit is a subtopic within the larger presentation. So, Erica, sorry, but you're right in front of me and you seem to be agreeable to this. When you talk about self-perform, what's one of the things that you talk about self-perform?
The trades that we self-perform.
Okay, the trades. So how long do you speak about the trades?
Well, I don't speak about them. The superintendent does.
Okay. Oh, yeah. All right. So how long does he speak about the trades?
30 seconds to a minute.
Yeah. So that's a 60-second bit on the trades. If you think about it, if you let's look at a whole project interview. Let's say your interview is 30 minutes, which that's what I'm seeing them now. The whole thing is made up of bits. So here I am. It's called Pop Goes the Weasel. I'm the executive, the project director, or whoever, CEO of the company. I stand up and say to the owner, thanks for having us here today. We're very proud of the work we've done for the healthcare system over the last 20 years. We've got a great team assembled here today. And the first thing that we're going to talk about is our plan for pre-construction. Ryan? And then Ryan gets up, he does his 5 minutes on pre-con. He sits down, the president of the company stands back up. Thanks, Ryan. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the schedule and how we're going to man it. Tom, and then Tom will stand. So it's a half an hour made up of little bits. That's how you should all start thinking about it. I want everyone right now to think about, and this is homework for you, and this is going to help us finish our day today. I want you all to think about what is the number one bit in your life. I want you all right now to think about the following 3 questions. 1, I want you to tell me what you do for the company. What do you actually do? Make it a little bit more interesting than I'm PM. What do you actually do? Number 2, I want you to tell me about the company. So if a stranger met you on the street and say, who do you work for? What would you tell them? Describe that to me. And number 3, tell me what you like to do for fun. So number 1, what you do for the company. Number 2, about the company. And number 3, what you like to do for fun. So I want you to take about 3 to 4 minutes right now to just jot down some ideas. I mean, you should have all been able to do this off the cuff. I'm going to give you a little bit of time to do some guidance. Then I'm going to ask some of you to volunteer to tell us a little bit about yourselves. And then I'll use that as a way to critique everybody and get into the teaching for the rest of the day. I think it's better to see people. I can already see things right now that I would comment on. So take 3 to 4 minutes, what you do for the company, describe it. About the company, describe it. What you like to do for fun. 4 minutes. What you do for the company, about the company, what you like to do for fun. About a minute. Thirty seconds. All right, how we feeling? Ryan, you feeling strong? I see you there. You look good. Yeah. All right, Kurt, talk to me.
Hi, Anthony. My name is Kurt Bozen. I'm one of the owners of the Bozen Company in Marshfield, Wisconsin. I'm mostly focused on pre-construction, estimating, and business development tasks and overseeing those areas of the company. The Bozen Company is a general contractor and construction manager that mostly works in central and northern Wisconsin, but in the last 5 or 6 years, we've been in 9 different states following different customers. And for fun, I like to watch and participate in various sports.
Okay, thank you, Kurt. Everybody give Kurt a round of applause. All right, good job. All right, so thank you. And now I could critique your camera setup. So this is, let's talk about the camera. And you can go ahead and mute yourself, Kurt, if you want. So the camera angle is extremely important, and this is where most people are failing when it comes to presenting virtually. Remember, I said we all have to become broadcast journalists, and people are trying to figure this out. Rule number one, I want that camera angle moved to eye level. So Erica, you look great. You're pretty close. I mean, it could be a little bit better. Heather, you were also great. Kurt, what am I staring at? Everyone, if you could see, when you saw Kurt talking, we're looking at a ceiling. So I cannot tell you how many ceiling fans I've seen over the last 3 months. I'm an expert on ceiling fans now. So this is an easy thing to do, is just adjust that camera angle. I actually figured this out before COVID-19. This is about 5 years ago. I told you I live in Sarasota. I used to live in Ohio, and I was on the road doing work, and my wife is an audiologist, so she helps people hear. and she was interviewing for a job at a hospital in Florida. And she said, hey, I got to do the Skype interview. You mind helping me out with it? I said, absolutely. So I was in my hotel room, and we connected via Skype or FaceTime or something. And I said, honey, I've been home for a few days, but are you sick or something? Because you just not looking very good. And she got offended, I guess rightfully so. And I said, well, there's just something off. And I said, do me a favor. And I had her take the laptop, and I had her move the laptop up and just hold it there. It completely changed instantly the way she looks. When your camera angle is on your desk or too low, what it does is it casts shadows on your neck and your jowls. One, it adds extra weight to you, and it doesn't make you look as flattering if that camera angle is at eye level. So whatever you have to do to make that eye level, you're gonna have to do it. Now, if it's a webcam, you got a little bit more flexibility. Here's a classic webcam you can get online. Amazon, this is like $70. I highly recommend that if you have an older laptop, that you actually invest the $70 to get an actual webcam. A lot of laptops now are fine. So if it's a webcam, you can kind of angle these and put them on different things. On Amazon, if you go and if you search mini tripod, you can get a little mini tripod. It's like that big that you can attach either to your phone, an iPad, or a little webcam, and that'll help elevate it. If you got a bigger cam, this is kind of funny for me. I told you I was, my Boy Scout motto is be prepared. I'm kind of a survival kind of guy, and I have all this freeze-dried food in my house, but they're these big cans. And what I do is I stack 2 cans on it, and it's perfect height for me to be eye level. So again, it may not be revolutionary, but here we are, one person, and Kurt, you're not alone. I see it every single day, me looking at up your nose and at the ceiling. So just something to think about as we get more into the space. I'll give you some more tips. Does that make sense to you, Kurt? And Kurt, do you have anything in particular? By the way, if you volunteer, I'll give you a little extra attention. So do you have anything that you want to know about presenting virtually? I think we're talking tomorrow, but I'm here to talk to you.
I think probably the hardest thing is to make sure that they're paying attention. That seems to be difficult when they look like they're either reading their email or something else on their desk. And I struggle with that.
Right. I mean, that's the same thing in live audiences. It's just more apparent in live audiences. One, you don't really know where they're looking. That's a challenge. That's why I hate this. I hate this because I have to, which is another teaching point. Where do you look? You always look into the lens of the camera. So you should, if you're on a laptop, you should see that little glass dot. You want to stare right into that thing. If you actually have a real camera that you've set up, which that's what I have, you can see the actual iris in there. I want you to look right into that, because right now it looks like I'm looking at all of you, right? Now I'm going to actually look at Kurt. Now I'm looking at Kurt. I could see Kurt's face. I could see his setup. Does it look like I'm looking at you? No, because I'm looking at the screen. That's the problem that I found, that everyone looks at the screen. They want to look at themselves, and it doesn't look like you're looking at them, and you're not connecting. Whoever can invent the lens embedded in the actual screen, so you're actually talking $1 billion idea there. We're not there yet, so you just got to get used to that, which is very disconcerting. When I speak live, as I said, I read people's body language. A lot of what I do is based on timing. I'll tell a joke, you'll laugh, and then I go on. With this, it's weird. That's why I don't like your cameras off, because I can't even see you. At least I can get a little bit of feedback out of my peripheral vision. It's not ideal, but it's where we are in 2020, July of 2020. So it's hard, Kurt, and it's hard to engage, especially when you can't see them, that you all turn your camera off. I don't know. That's why you got to assume that they're not paying attention and try to use their names. You need to bring interactivity in. You have to ask more questions. You have to be more prepared with that interaction. You can't just spew content out of your mouth and expect people to get it without some interactivity. That's why I always try to build some interactivity. And like I did in the beginning, tell me, a couple of you, who you are, what do you want to get out of today, because that gets the juices flowing and that gets everybody used to engaging. And I think that makes it a little bit more lively than just spewing content. So we'll get some more tips on how to engage, how to do that as we go through. But thank you, Kurt. Yep. All right, who wants to volunteer now? Okay, I'm going to volunteer Galaxy 10. And this is a rule that there's somebody named Galaxy S10. If you could turn your camera off or at least speak up. Who are you?
Sorry about that, Anthony. I'm Aaron.
Hey, Aaron, so that's Galaxy S10 is not the name your mom gave you, right?
No, I'm not sure why that's even in there. The last time.
Yeah, and by the way, I'm not criticizing anybody because I see this every day. So when you get onto Zoom, I think if you were logged in, it automatically takes your computer name and sticks it in there. So you want to, if that happens, there's a setting you can see and just put your name in there because you want to have people, you know, knowing who you are. Again, don't take that as a criticism. A lot of people do that. It's just something to think about. And also remember, perception is reality. Everything. So I'm seeing on the side now, I'm going to look off to the side. I see Brian. I see Greg. It's lowercase. I don't know your last name. What's the perception there? I want to see everybody. It's the little things that's gonna ramp you up. If you're BD or marketing, this is your job to make sure that the people on your team, they're presenting themselves, you know, in written word and in video. So things to think about. All right, go for it, Aaron.
I'm a carpenter / supervisor for the Bozen Company. Do a lot of commercial construction, churches, apartment buildings, so on, stuff like that. I really enjoy it. The main thing I enjoy, I guess, is hunting, fishing, and spending time with my family.
Okay. All right. And so to my point, I was talking to Kurt about we're staring up. Now I know you're in your truck, but you've got to think about how to organize yourself so you can look as good as you can. I mean, sometimes the allure of a superintendent being in the field, it kind of says to the owner, hey, I'm in the field. I'm just taking a quick break because I want to get to it. But if it's distracting to what you're trying to say, that's bad. A thing for the people in their trucks, GoPro. GoPro makes the little suction cups. You can find them on Amazon too. So if you're not in charge of this, go back and tell your company, get a little suction cup. You can mount it on the windshield, and then it has a little holder for your phone. You can get adapters. That would be really cool to do. Just stick it right on the windshield, and then I could see you engage with you right away. Of course, per Bob, don't be doing this when you're driving unless you're not participating, whether it's just an audio call. I don't know. That's your guys' call. But again, it's those little things just to kind of get that camera angle where you need to be. Thanks, Aaron. Appreciate it. All right. Anybody want to volunteer now?
I'll go, Anthony.
All right.
By the way, I want to say happy belated birthday, too.
Well, thank you. That was yesterday. I'll tell you what I did on my birthday after you get going, because I'll tell you it kind of fits into, I had a mini crisis on my own. So go ahead, Jay. Good to see you.
Perfect. Jay Thompson, I'm Vice President for Vogel Brothers Building Company. I started as an intern 17 years ago with Vogel Brothers. I focus on development, both for people in our organization as well as business development. We're a 5th generation contractor based in Madison, focused primarily on commercial work. And for fun, I like to do anything related to sports and outside.
Okay, good. I only gave you a little bit of time to prepare, so I'm not going to critique everybody on the length of what you're doing, but I want you to think about truly what I've just had you do, what you do for the company, about the company, and what you'd like to do for fun. It's the single most asked question you get in life. Think about it. You're at your kid's soccer game. Hey, Jay, what you do? You're at a business conference. Hey, Kurt, what you do? You're at a business conference. Hey, Galaxy S10 Aaron, what do? You get asked that question more than any other question in life. So put some strategic thought into it. And all of you so far have given me like 30 seconds of stuff. I bet your company is a little bit more expansive than just giving me what they do. Same with what you do for your job. So just that's homework. Go back and think a little bit about that. All right, well, let's talk about another physical thing. This is a rule. Although you don't look terrible, my rule is no windows behind you. So Heather, I don't know where Heather went, but she has a window behind you. The problem with having windows behind you is that the camera tries to expose to the window, and that casts you in shadow. So I bet you would look fantastic if you didn't have that window behind you. So here's my advice. Whether it's your office, Jay, are you at home or are you at the office?
Yeah, I'm at home.
Okay, yeah. So, and again, I get it. You can't go, your wife or your husband will get mad if you start moving everything around. I would find a space. I call it my command center. It's an area of your office or in the office where people can do these things. Or if it's in your home, you find a place that you create your command center where everything you need to be to leave that positive perception within reach. You got your lighting the way it needs to be. I'll talk to you a little bit about that. You got your camera angle placed, that tripod there. You got things like water that you may need. A funny story, I had a call with a very large GC National GC about 2 weeks ago, and I said, how's your virtual interviewing go? And he's like, man, it's an absolute disaster. They had this really important project they were interviewing for, and the superintendent kept getting up to get water. I mean, he's walking around, he's petting his dog. He just wasn't thinking that he was on camera. You would never do something like that in a live audience. I think by being at home, you're relaxed a little bit, and you really got to create a space where that's your studio, if you will. So you look in your house. Okay, where can I angle myself so the window's not behind me? Let's talk about other distractions, the backgrounds. I'm a big less is more kind of a guy. How many times have I, or you're watching TV at night, watching Fox News or CNN or something, and somebody's being interviewed at home, and you're looking in the background, hey, what books are they reading now? What does his family look like? And then that's all you're doing is seeing, oh, what's that thing? That looks weird. And as you're searching the background, looking at all those distracting things, what are you hearing coming out of the person's mouth? Wah, 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 wah. So find a space. For me, I thought Zoom, I like Zoom. It's not perfect. They have that virtual background thing. I despise it now, because even with a green screen, it just doesn't look real. And if you move, you don't have a green screen, you look really funky. So I just like clean here. That's paper. So all the company people on the phone, it's not that much. There's a website called bnhphoto.com, bnhphoto.com. They have everything that you could need to look better from a virtual presentation standpoint. These reams of paper, they're I think 81 inches by 9 feet or something like that. You can get them in any color. There's a framing system. The paper's about $60. The framing system's about 100 and something. So for less than $150 or so, you can create a background anywhere on the planet. You could put it in your office, you could put it in your house, and then it just has this background. So clean, no distractions, I think are the best. Let's talk about lighting. I know a lot of you have been through these things before, but in a perfect world, ultimate world, you have three lights that will illuminate you so people that can see you. I know you might not be able to do 3, but 2 are mandatory. So one would be in front of you, kind of off to your right, maybe about 3 to 4 feet from you, depending on the brightness of the light. That's called the key light. That is the light, the main light on your face that makes you be able to, people to see you. The other light is a fill light. It fills in the shadows. And in a perfect world, if you can pull it off, you have what is called a backlight that actually hits the back of your head and makes you pop even more from the background, which I forgot to turn mine on. Let me turn mine on here. So here I am. Maybe you can see it a little bit. It illuminates a little bit big, makes it pop. So you got to be lit. If you're not lit, here, I'll show you. I'll turn off my fill light, and you can see now I'm in shadow, right? So it's one side of my face. It looks like I'm wearing a mask. So if you can, 2 lights in front. You don't have to break the bank. You get little those circle lights. A little lamp will do if you can figure it out at your house. I get it. It's within a reason. For your people at your office, the companies, there's no excuse not to have a space at the office that you can organize yourself, have a nice clean background where people come up. Along those same lines, a lot of my clients in the industry, they're trying to set up their conference rooms so that, like, the owner can see everybody in the room. That is a challenge sometimes because there's inevitably one person that's right in front of the camera. They sound good, they look good, but as you go down the line to maybe to the 6th person, they're far from the camera, they can't be heard as well. So I like to create that command center where whoever's presenting walks up in front of the camera with that nice background, and then you can transition just like you would a live audience. So Jay, any specific questions for you that you want to know about?
That was one of them where we had a big interview a week or 2 weeks ago, and we had all 6 of our teams spaced 6 feet apart on the screen, and it just was tough to get anything from them. But the other question is visuals. What do you suggest as far as sharing visuals with the screen versus being able to see your face larger when the whole screen isn't taken up by a visual?
Yeah, so this is kind of what I teach when we do live interview prep is that, if you can have somebody, the BD person, typically there in the live interview, running the PowerPoint, all of that. Same kind of concept for virtual. If you're doing Zoom, I would have that person running the screen share. We don't have time to really get into it today, but I would only have visuals on the screen for as long as you need them there. So you could screen share, you could talk over the visuals. Hey, we got an example of a building we built last year where we used 3D BIM modeling to show you blah, 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 have it up there for, a little bit amount of time, then go back to the picture of the person communicating. That's what I teach in life anyway. Don't get locked to that PowerPoint and just read from it. You should only have visuals up there when they are necessary to increase the 20% that the person's going to remember. If not, lose them. It's bad enough looking at somebody who doesn't know how to speak on a camera. It's even worse just listening to somebody drone on while staring at the PowerPoint slide with a paragraph of content on it. So kind of mix it up a little bit is what I would recommend. And really go for your office, go back. Don't do that anymore, Jay. Don't have the whole room on there. Get that little command center and then have the person step up to the camera. That's going to be a lot more effective than trying to fit everybody on it. Plus, you might get COVID-19 and that wouldn't be a good thing either if you're so kind of close together. All right. So thank you very much. All right. We got probably time for one more person. Let's see. Who haven't we picked on yet? Tanner. Pick on Tanner.
Hey, how's it going?
Going well.
Good. So I'm Tanner Bozen. I'm an assistant PM at the Bozen Company. I'm Kurt's son, actually. I just graduated college in May, so I just started working here. I try and help out the PMs on job sites, make their lives easier, get stuff done, try and take some load off their hands, assist with the superintendent as well. About our company, just like my dad said, general contractor out of Marshfield. Third generation construction family. I hope to make it fourth one day. And for fun, I like to do sports, mostly golf in the summertime. When it's nice out, be outside and hang with friends.
All right, thank you. Tanner, where are you looking? Do you have your notes off to the side of your camera?
Yeah, they're just laying here.
Yeah, so what you're doing is you're looking everywhere but in the camera. And this is a weird thing that you got to kind of get over. So, it's okay to use notes. The problem with having notes that when you're on camera is you deviate any few inches and it doesn't look like you're looking at people. So what I do, this is a little tip. So I did a promo video, I think, for this session. And what I did is I scripted it out. I make my notes big enough for me to see, just the highlights. And then what I do is I get a little piece of tape and I tape it literally millimeters below the camera lens. Or if you're using a laptop, put it right down on the screen. I mean, or have something else right there that you can see it. And so when I look at my notes, my eyes can move. See, my eyes move to what I'm going to say, not my entire head. And that's what was happening with you and everybody else, that you're moving your head to look at your notes. I'd rather you just move your eyes. So taping that up a little bit will help you give the perception that you're engaging a little bit more. That's what broadcast journalists use, those teleprompters. They have their notes right behind the camera, that cue card guy, because they want to always look like they're looking at the camera. It's the same kind of stuff. I mean, I used to do media training to teach people how to be on camera. So a lot of these same concepts apply. Audio. I'm not saying what you have is bad, because it will always work. You'll see them on TV when they're important interviews. It's the hardwired earbuds that go right into are they right into your laptop, Tanner? Is that what they are?
Into my phone.
In your phone? That's fine. I have, not ideal, I have AirPods so I can hear you. And then for me, that's a broadcast quality microphone that I have right below the frame, so it sounds good. The problem with these is that they die. I've had these die many, many times in my presentation. So what I do is I have one in my ear. So it's kind of not obvious. It kind of is, but not those wires. And then I have the other one about half an hour into my presentation. I'll pull it out. So when this one dies, I'll just swap the other one. I always want to have backup. So that's what I want to talk about now. And then I'll take some questions. That old saying, if something's going to happen, it will, is so true when it comes to virtual presenting. So I'm all about redundancies. I'm all about the technology. So it was my birthday yesterday, and what I dealt with all day long was a disaster. So on Sunday, it's around 5 o'clock. I live in Florida. It was a blue sky, and all of a sudden, bam, I thought a building exploded. A lightning bolt hit, I guess, my house or somewhere in my yard and knocked out my internet. So I had a job yesterday. I had this one today at 4. I have one tomorrow. And I'm like, well, crap, the internet's out. That's kind of important. What, don't you think? So I called Comcast, my cable company. Oh yeah, we can get there Tuesday. And so I said, all right. So I had to cancel my job yesterday, and I equate the internet, my analogy or metaphor or whatever is my airplane. Because in the old days, if I'm going to come up to Madison or Milwaukee and I get socked in because of weather, I can't get there. I can't present. That would be bad. We'd have to cancel the session. Same thing with my internet. If I don't have internet access, I can't do this thing. So I called Jeff and Bob this morning and said, man, I hate to do this. I've never done it except for yesterday. I got to cancel it. And by some miracle, the cable company showed up and fixed my internet. I haven't figured this one out yet. A backup for internet would be my hotspot. I've tried it. I have pretty fast, 4G here. Maybe when 5G comes out, it'll be better, but it's spotty. The signal goes in and out. I freeze. I cannot figure that out. So if anyone can figure out a solution for if your internet goes down, please let me know. But everything else, I've got backups. I've got 3 cameras right now that I could plug in once my camera goes down. I've got this microphone, but I got another microphone. I got that webcam I showed you. On my computer, I have everything turned off except Zoom. My email's turned off. Norton Antivirus is muted. All my other programs are turned off. Anything that can suck the power from your processor will slow down your internet and cause you to have the jitters or whatever it may be. So again, it's these little things. If you're a company person, a BD person, I have a checklist. Here's what we have to do. Maybe I'll create one. I'll send it to you. Check your internet, turn things off. How's your mic sound? Test it. It's all these little things that could really take away from the power of your presentation. If they go down, they seem silly, but it really affects the perception of you, especially if it's for new business. So again, I only had an hour and 15 minutes. I tried to hit you with 30,000 feet concepts. It's all about engaging. It's all about connecting. Number one, don't let anything that's distracting disconnect you. That was where I would start. So remove those backgrounds, remove the technology issues, remove the camera angle issues. Number 2, get your content down. Most of you are so worried about what you're going to say next. You can never think about how I'm going to connect and how I'm going to do all these things. So get your content done. Watch those videos I'm going to send you next week. That's going to give you a lot more tips on how to be a more effective communicator. We talked about a lot. I left a little bit of time just to kind of ask me questions about anything we did not talk about. I could talk for hours on this. Now's your chance to ask away, pick my brain. And finally, before we go, if you have a question, call me. Jay, if you want to know how to set up your office, give me a call. We'll get on Zoom. I'm not going to charge you within reason. I mean, don't be calling me every day, but I can look at your setup. I give you advice. We could talk about things we weren't remotely able to get to today. I'm a friend of AGC of Wisconsin. I've known Bob and Jeff for a long time. Anything you guys need to up your game, I'm here to help with. So any questions?
I got another one for you, Anthony.
All right.
So, you've got the command center with your iBud in. So if we've got a group of like 6 presenting, then do you just have them not even watching the rest of the Zoom? Or what do you suggest for like their setup if they're not on so they can still stay engaged, or maybe help jump in and answer questions as they come up?
Are you talking about the other people on your team that are in the room?
Yeah.
If you want to have, maybe 2 cameras set up and you're all in the same room. So I would have, just like it's a live presentation, I would have, the place where you walk up to, it's just the person. So they're this big, they're not that big, and you could see 10 people, right? And then maybe when you have Q&A, you can go back to that, or maybe you can have another laptop, or, and this is an idea, I'd have to talk about your setup. Maybe you have 3 stations where you have some people set up. Remember, no one on the other side of the camera knows what your setup is. They can only see what's in that little frame. Tanner and Jay and Kurt and everybody that's on this call, I don't know anything beyond this little rectangle. So maybe you set up some different angles. We could talk more specifically about your setup, but I think the benefit of having somebody big and engaging far outweighs the little tiny heads and you can't hear the people. It's not ideal, but you know, you're not speaking as a group, you're speaking as individuals in one room. If it's Q&A where you're bouncing back and forth, you know, I'd have to talk to you about how you're doing that. I could give you some better advice on that, but rule of thumb, try to make it big, try to be as prominent as you can so you can connect with the people. Does that make sense? Does that address your question?
Yeah.
What else?
Anthony, how do you
Yes,
get
sir.
over the lag in the communication time? Like after you present something and you want a response back, how do you get over that little bit of lag time?
Are you talking the actual, you're talking about the actual few seconds it takes for me to ask a question and there's this awkward silence, right? Yeah, so there's perfection and there's reality. And the reality is you just need to know that's going to happen. One, if the lag time is because you have some audio issue, I've had that happen to me. I had this new device that I that I bought that had a sync issue with the audio versus the video. I mean, that's a technology issue, but just know that that's what it is, because they have to unmute themselves. People forget how to unmute themselves. And it might be you just have to deal with it. I think that's just going to be the best practice, best protocol. If you're talking to somebody else, if you're presenting as a team, you can coordinate that, can't you? You could say, okay, guys, I'm going to ask Bob a question who's sitting to my right, and you're just going to keep talking as he comes in, and you've got to have to coordinate it. When I do live training, that's what we really work hard on, how to get from one presenter to the other without this awkward, hold on, let me get up and walk over to the room. The person should be talking as the other person unmutes themselves, comes on camera, and then they're right away. That's going to take a little bit of coordination. You know, one thing, Barry, think of this as a show. This is a production, like a TV production. You should have a controller, and maybe that's your BD person. You have all your presenters. Think of your anchors and your guests, and you should coordinate this in advance. How are we going to get into each other? How are we going to get out each other? Who's going to ask what question or answer what question? You put some thought into it, and you'll find what works best for your company.
Okay, Anthony, you offered, so we'll make sure everybody has your contact information. And I want to thank everybody for participating, and hope you all have a good 4th of July, safe 4th of July, and we'll talk to you later.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Take
Anthony.
care.
All right.
Appreciate it.